What's up guys, Houndish here, and today I wanted to jump in and talk about some legendary weapons in Destiny 2. And specifically I wanted to point out just some of the standout weapons which are pretty good for both PvP and PvE stuff. Most of these weapons are pretty easy to attain. There are a few different types of weapons in this list. Of course, these aren't all of the good weapons in the game, but kind of in these early stages, these are ones that stand out to me. So firstly, the hand cannon Better Devils. This is a really solid hand cannon. It actually comes from the Crucible loot table, so you get a chance at it playing Crucible matches or turning in tokens at Lord Shaxx. I believe it can also drop from other sources in the game. So this is an adaptive frame weapon. We have fast draw, steady hand, and sure shot HCS in the sights. We've got extended mag. The weapon has a greatly increased magazine size but reloads slower. We've got flared magwell, slightly increased stability and increased reload speed, and then explosive payloads. Projectiles create an area of effect detonation on impact. And all around, this is a really solid hand cannon for PvE and PvP stuff. One of the better feeling hand cannons in my opinion. Explosive rounds in PvP seems to be pretty beneficial still. You'll notice that the range is much more effective with explosive payload. Back in Destiny 1, explosive rounds actually didn't have any damage drop off at range. I'm not certain if that works in the exact same way in Destiny 2, but it definitely seems to help out in the Better Devils. Generally though, this hand cannon does handle very well, and I feel like that's the main reason that I've got it in this list. It's got solid target acquisition, and it packs a bit more of a punch again because of the explosive payload. So on top of being fairly precise and doing good damage, you know, it kind of helps stagger opponents and keep them held back a little bit. In PvE, it's a very good hand cannon. Again, just packs a punch, feels really precise, target acquisition is good, explosive payload increases your damage as well in PvE stuff, so that's really nice. Generally, there just isn't anything I can say that's really bad about this hand cannon. Up next, we have the Nameless Midnight, and this is an absolutely fantastic Vanguard scout rifle. So its intrinsic archetype is precision frame. We've got red dot 2 MOA, we've got red dot micro and rifle scope right there. Up next, we have flared magwell, optimized for fast reloading. We also have steady rounds, the magazine is optimized for recoil control, and finally explosive payload once again. In PvE stuff, explosive rounds is really good. This thing will do really well inside of strikes, in the raid, use it in patrol. Of course, because it's a scout rifle, it's got an absolute ton of range, but it's still a really effective weapon up close, and to me, explosive rounds on scout rifles just makes them feel better, especially in close range. Outside of the perks though, it has a nice combination of rate of fire versus impact, good stability and handling all around. It's a very precise weapon, and that carries over to the Crucible with this thing as well. I've found it to be one of the more competitive weapons inside of PvP. It causes a lot of flinch and really staggers people at range, and it'll compete with things like Mida Multitool, especially as you get kind of further away. So once again, at this point, there is just nothing I can say that is bad about this scout rifle. It's really solid all around. Up next, I wanted to talk about a couple of auto rifles. So we have the Prosecutor here, which is actually the new Trials auto rifle. It's a precision frame weapon. We have chambered compensator, corkscrew rifling, and polygonal rifling, as well as slideways, which is a new perk. Sliding partially reloads the weapon's magazine and temporarily boosts handling and stability. We've got tap the trigger, grants a short period of increased accuracy on initial trigger pull, as well as hip fire grip, which increases accuracy and stability when firing from the hip. Inside of PvP, this is a very good auto rifle. It's going to be one of the best in the game. It's actually very similar to Uriel's Gift as well, which is an Omolon auto rifle, which is really popular in the Crucible right now. Both of these are pretty similar to each other, to be honest, so Uriel's Gift is one to also look out for. But in the Crucible, just a ton of stability on both of these weapons, with their recoil pattern, which is much more predictably vertical as opposed to being more horizontal, which is typically more difficult to control. These things are pretty laser-like, and in terms of time to kill, they just feel really good if you land all of your shots. Again, the impact and rate of fire class is just a really nice balance, and like the other weapons in this list, inside of PvE content, it really transfers. You know, these weapons perform really well. You could perhaps get more kind of PvE-centric bonuses on assault rifles, things like glass half full, or whatever the new equivalent is called. Any of the damage stat stacking bonuses or the kind of reactive reload style bonuses would also be pretty good in PvE, but in terms of just very solid assault rifles, both the Prosecutor from Trials and Uriel's Gift are really good in any kind of activity. A standout power weapon, which I wanted to mention, would be the Curtain Call rocket launcher. So it's an aggressive frame weapon, which means it does high damage. We've got volatile launch, hard launch, and counter mass, so you can play around with the velocity and the blast radius a little bit, depending on what you want for PvE or PvP. It has high velocity rounds though. The weapon projectiles are particularly light and quick, as well as black powder. This weapon's explosives are more effective, and it also has cluster bomb. Rockets spawn cluster bombs upon detonation. Now, in terms of the Crucible, it's just a decent rocket really. It's got a decent enough blast radius to get some kills. It's kind of good to have maybe one of these on your team in a game mode like Trials. It can be kind of useful firing one onto a zone or in control or something like that. But really, inside of PvE stuff, this is a very, very good rocket launcher. It does work inside of the raid. It has a good blast radius, and the explosive rounds, or the cluster bombs, sorry, mean that it does one wave of damage and then another wave of damage, and also spreads out a little bit, so it can kind of take down a bunch of adds, and it can also do a lot of damage to one tanky target. It's not quite dubious volley or merciless or anything like that, but in terms of a nice simple rocket launcher that can do some pretty serious work, Curtain Call is one that you should have in the collection. The final weapon, which is worth a mention, is a really solid one right here, the Call to Serve Scout Rifle, and this will come from Devrim K in the EDZ. It's a precision frame weapon, so it's a very precise weapon. We have the circular iron sight, as well as the Model 8 red sight and the Mark 15 lens. Extended magazine, so greatly increased mag size but reloads slower, as well as appended mag. The weapon's magazine is built for higher capacity, which increases magazine size. And finally, triple tap, rapidly landing precision hits will return one round to the magazine from reserves. Now, this is a better PvE weapon than it is a PvP weapon. Obviously, triple tap is very beneficial in PvE. This thing is really good at pumping rounds into tanky targets. It's very good at long range as well, this weapon. But you know, if you're kind of in a public event, you can just empty rounds out of this thing into servitors or to any boss with a crit spot. You also have a fair amount of variety with the scopes on this thing. And again, there's just nothing really bad that I could say about this scout rifle. It's an absolute workhorse of a weapon. Inside of the Crucible, triple tap itself obviously isn't generally going to be the most useful thing unless you're kind of firing down a lane from a very long distance and you can get a whole bunch of kills potentially. The thing that's good about this scout rifle is that it's highly accurate, and it doesn't seem to be as heavily affected by flinch as some other weapons, but if you can get a long range with this scout rifle, you are going to devastate in PvP. So there we go guys, those are 5 legendary weapons that really stand out to me as being very good and very flexible between different types of activities. Like I said before, these aren't all of the good weapons in the game. There are weapons that are much better suited to one particular thing, for example, but I would be curious to hear your top weapons in the comment section below. What are you enjoying the most right now, and what kind of activities are you using these different weapons for? If you have enjoyed this video though, a like is very much appreciated below guys, and if you're new to the channel, be sure to hit subscribe to keep up to date with even more Destiny 2 content. But for now, I hope you guys have an awesome day.